It's the Security Weekly News, episode 254. I'm back, and it is welcome to the week of 6 November 2022. It is Election Day in the United States, so go and vote. I won't tell you who to vote for, but please go vote. We've got exploding heads, Mastodon, James Zhong, Azov, Zlibrary, Siemens and Schneider, Chinese AI, Jason Wood, and more on the Security Weekly News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News.
How is your business staying one step ahead of cybercriminals? Secure your email applications, network, and data with Barracuda. Protect your business and go from zero to security in no time flat. Whether your team is working in one location or many, Barracuda has solutions that are easy to buy, deploy, and use. Learn how Barracuda can protect your business against ransomware, phishing, and other cyber attacks. Visit securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Barracuda, your journey secured. All right, it's the Security Weekly News, and I'm Doug White. Well, Elon bought Twitter. John Williams wrote a minor key intro so that he could walk into it, like dun, 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 dun. I just violated. Who knows how many copyrights that violated, but he took it over. He fired a lot of executives right away. Then he started in on firing everybody else and was actually firing people that probably he shouldn't have fired and keeping people he shouldn't have kept. And now he's trying to hire some of them back and on and on and on. It's, it's like a giant burning barrel filled with clowns. So, a burning clown barrel. Exactly. But then he started banning accounts that criticized his free speech initiative. Yeah, I like that one. It's like, we're going to be all free unless you say something about me. I'm telling you, Elon, send me the Tesla X and we'll be good. But anyway, it's sort of one of those floggings will continue until the morale improves kind of things. Yeah, I bet it's a fun place to work right now. Anyway, as celebrities and others flee Twitter, whilst other people flock to Twitter so they can say the N-word, who knows what will happen? It's a very confusing time over at the big tweet. But so this story was about Mastodon, which I didn't know that much about. But Mastodon, and I'm not advocating for it, by the way. Well, Mastodon is one of those open source, decentralized, micro-blogging social media platforms that suddenly jumped from, I don't know what, but to over 1 million active monthly users for the first time. And creator Eugen Rochko said that almost half of these new users signed up after the 27th of October, which is, of course, the day in history when Elon took over Twitter. And now, I still don't understand why Elon's any worse than what was going on before, but apparently it is. Anyway, I'm not advocating for Mastodon. I'm not dissing Twitter. I don't know. It's 4chan is a smoking cesspool. Twitter's a smoking cesspool. I don't see how it's any worse or better, one way or the other. But anyway, apparently Mastodon allows a 500-character post called a toot. Yeah, a toot. You bet. Apparently, giant, hairy, tusked elephants made a sound like toot. No, yeah, right. But it's apparently a lot like Twitter, looks kind of like Twitter, basically behaves like Twitter, but it uses a network of self-hosted servers. So this means it's a kind of Borg collective, and each of those decentralized servers is somewhat independent. So basically, it's like a chained BBS or something used to be. Direct messages aren't encrypted. Admins can read them just like Twitter. But they've had 1,124 new servers joining since the 27th of October, a day that will live in, I don't know, infamy? Maybe not. I don't get what all the furor is about. Elon, send me the car, okay? Really, man. The name of the mystery hacker that stole 50,000 Bitcoins from Silk Road has been announced. It's James Zhong. And I'm going to tell you that's a pretty common name, actually. But I actually know somebody who's named that, but it wasn't them. If it is you, James, could you please, maybe I'll take like 40, 50 Bitcoins. It'll be fine. But anyway, this James Zhong pled guilty to money laundering on Friday and other counts. Zhong exploited a withdrawal processing flaw, if you don't recall this, which basically allowed him to withdraw more Bitcoin than he deposited. So this is a kind of an interesting trick, and there used to be a trick with ATM machines that you could kind of do that. You always got caught, but you could kind of do that. But basically what happened was he had gotten 51,351.9 Bitcoins, which at the time in November of 2021 was worth about $3.3 billion. Yeah, billion with a B. That today, that's about $1.8 billion currently. Zhong funded 9 accounts on Silk Road with 200 to 2,000 Bitcoins each. So he obviously had quite a few Bitcoins anyway. But he funded these accounts and then immediately set up, probably scripts that withdrew very quickly 140 separate withdrawals. Now, there was a lag in the transaction system that allowed him to withdraw coins that were already being withdrawn. So you could withdraw more coins than you put in, as long as you did it really, really quick before it updated on both sides. And so, yeah. So the Department of Justice said that on the 9th of November in 2021, they searched Zhong's residence and found 50,491 Bitcoin hidden in a floor safe and on a single board computer, which was buried under some blankets in a popcorn tin in the bathroom closet. I've actually gone on a couple of these kind of things, and yeah, that's what it's like. You're just poking through stuff and going, what's this? And you hope it's nothing really gross. They found 11.12 Bitcoin. They didn't say where that was. They got $662,000 in cash, 25 Casakias coins. I'll use the Latin pronunciation, Casakias. I don't know what that means, but Casakias coins, 4 1-ounce silver bars, 4 10-ounce silver bars, 3 1-ounce gold bars, and 1 gold coin. And it started to sound like that Slim Whitman scene in Dr. Strangelove where he's going, 1 U.S. Army prophylactic, $100 in rubles, $100 in gold, 1 copy of a nudie magazine. You know that famous scene with Slim Whitman when he's flying the bomber, yeah. Anyway, Zhong will be sentenced in February of 2023 and is facing at least 20 years in prison on the charge of wire fraud. So it's starting to sound old school there. Azov ransomware has been and continues to be heavily distributed, apparently, worldwide, and it's now been shown to be a data wiping software rather than a ransomware software. The ransomware showed up last month acting like ransomware, and it was being distributed, wait for it, via wares. Imagine that. Cracked and pirated software contains malware. I know you're shocked. I was too. But anyway, but then it turns out it doesn't have like a traditional ransom note or anything, like the one where it says put $1 million in a paper bag and go down to the bridge and toss it off at midnight and don't bring Walter Sobchak no matter what you do kind of thing. But it demands instead that you contact on Twitter. They didn't have Mastodon accounts, unfortunately, so you couldn't toot your distress. But they demand that you contact some people, and they gave a list of hashtags, and a lot of them are like security researchers or journalists. And then it has all this political messaging on it about the Ukraine, about Taiwan, about all kinds of stuff. Get your tinfoil hats out, who knows what. But basically they said if you want your files back, you need to contact all these people for assistance. But it doesn't actually seem that the people would have any kind of mechanism to actually do anything for you. So Check Point analyzed this ransomware, and they found out that it's really not ransomware per se. It basically intermittently overwrites data on your drive. So it skips along 666 bytes. Oh, hackneyed and trite much. 666 bytes at a time to corrupt your drive. It was also a date bomb. So the date bomb, and boy, this ought to be the theme of the show. The date bomb was the 27th of October at 10:14 in the morning, or 10:14 UTC, which triggered it. And so then each 666 byte chunk alternates, so it skips over 666 bytes and it writes a bunch of garbage to the next 666 byte. And so if you watch a lot of horror movies, you know that 666 is the number of the beast from the King James Bible. But the actual translation from Arabic, the number is 616 and 616 is the area code of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And since my friend Jerry lives in Grand Rapids, Michigan, well, I guess we know where this is going. So call an exorcist. But anyway, the ransomware infects pretty much other 64-bit executables on the device as well. So it doesn't just overwrite data files. It actually goes after 64-bit executables, but in those cases, it basically injects smoke loader botnet onto those 64-bit executables, and then that allows it to actually redistribute. So it may actually also be distributing other malware. They said they weren't sure. But smoke loader, botnet, you can distribute anything you want. So who knows what all it's doing. There's a lot of details in the article if you are interested in reading up on this particular malware. Zlibrary had their domain seized by the U.S. Department of Justice this morning. The popular ebook collection has over 11 million books and 84 million articles for free on their website. Now, this has always been a kind of sketchy site. A lot of academics and people don't like it because what was happening was people were taking books that were like textbooks, and we won't get into a whole us versus them kind of thing. But I mean, authors don't want their books being given away if they're earning, that's where their royalties come from for actually writing the books. But people were pushing them up on there. Articles that were not allowed to be published were being put on there as well. I know that I had a journal article on there once, and I didn't care because I wasn't getting any money for it anyway, but the journal cared. The journal asked me if I put it up there, and I was like, no, I didn't. But z-lib.org, b-ok.org, and 3lib.net all started displaying seizure messages yesterday. And the examination of who is on this showed that all the seized domains had been switched to DNS entries for ns1.cserver.com and ns2.cserver.com, which are very commonly used DNS servers for U.S. law enforcement. But then all of a sudden they updated to Injala, which is another anonymized hosting provider, and they put some of the sites back up. But apparently, Zlibrary is now only available via its Tor Onion address. But the site actually has a notice on it on the Tor Onion site that says there's problems with their servers. So it would appear that the sites were seized for all these uploads that had violated copyright of the original authors without any mechanism for stopping that. Zlibrary started back in 2009 as a file sharing platform where you could get copies of textbooks and journal articles. This is the first place I saw it, was people that were using it to get textbooks without paying for them. And so, I know some of you feel great about that, some of you feel negative about that, but regardless, that's what Zlibrary is. We've all used it. Come on. I got a job a programming job offer once in China, and in China, and it was kind of cool in a way. I was in China. We were looking at this place, and the Chinese government had built a town. I mean, they just built like a building. They built a town, and it had all these really like tall buildings and all these like rolling hills and lakes and running paths, and it looked a lot like San Francisco. And, it was super posh. Nobody was living there. That was the creepy thing. It was like this giant ghost town that was just perfect. Had a lot of pollution, though, so it was like smokier than it looked like San Francisco in the morning. But, the idea that they told me was they were trying to hire programmers to get them to move to China, that money would go a long way in China. And, of course, they do have great food. I mean, you got to say, whatever you think about the People's Republic of China, they got some good food there. But and the people are actually really nice. The government, it's like all governments. The people there are super nice. But anyway, I turned the offer down because even though the whole place was beautiful, it was kind of deserted, and I was thinking this is pretty creepy. And they told me they were mostly trying to target Malaysian and Singapore Chinese nationals who had moved away from China. But recently, Chinese employers have been advertising, according to the headline, and so this is a squirrely article. According to the headline, Chinese government has been advertised for 1 million employees with technical AI skills per the Center for Security and Emerging Technology, which is called CSET. But if you actually read the article, which I did, it says around 6.8 million job listings were posted by Chinese ministries between 2016 and 2021, which is a pretty big range for this, but that was the range they did in their study. And around those ads, 1 million of them were tech jobs. So I guess that's where they got the 1 million, but only 36,000, which is still a lot, 36,000 jobs were related to AI. Now, the headline said 1 million AI jobs, but it was actually more like 36,000 over 5 years. But that's still a lot. So, that's a little bit confusing. But most of the jobs were entry-level jobs, and they only paid $20,000 to $30,000 in Shanghai. And if you went to the Heilongjiang site, they were paying $8,000 to $18,000 in Heilongjiang province. But I mean, money goes a long way in China. So, making, $30,000 in Shanghai, you could probably afford an apartment, although Shanghai is a lot more expensive than Heilongjiang. Anyway, so, I mean, AI is coming. China's always trying to think ahead of the curve. And so I'm guessing they're trying to hire more and more people to get them involved in the AI market, because they probably want to start making cheap Chinese knockoffs of those robot dogs from Boston Robotics that, will be chasing us all in the near future. Siemens and Schneider Electric released their November Patch Tuesday advisories, and Siemens released 9 security advisories with this for 30 different vulnerabilities. Schneider only published 1 advisory, but 9 of the Siemens vulnerabilities were rated critical, and 4 had high or critical flaws. They were found in SciCam Q100 power meter devices, which those particular ones allowed hijacking sessions, crashing the device, and executing arbitrary code. Scalance W1750D devices had more than a dozen vulnerabilities. The Siemens advisory addressed a critical vulnerability which described weak key protection in cinematic products. Some of these have patches and some don't. Team Center Visualization, JT2Go Parasolid, and QMS Automotive were all reporting high severity vulnerabilities that have been patched. And there were other medium severity flaws in Rugged COM ROS, industrial controllers, and SINEC network management system. So if you haven't checked up on all your OT, IIoT stuff that's manufactured by Siemens and Schneider, or anybody else for that matter, you might want to go check this out, because it's probably a good time to patch it before somebody comes looking for you. Google patched high-severity privilege escalation vulnerabilities in Android this week. The November patch release included over 40 vulnerabilities, including the high-severity ones. The patch update included fixes for 17 security defects, of which 12 had escalation of privilege. There were 3 denial of service and 2 information disclosure problems. All of these impacted Android 10 and newer releases up through Android 13. So you know what to do. You need to patch it. I mean, really, please patch that stuff. Well, his work on genetic mutations, rabies, and brain prions resulted in what was described as a toxic, rabid puddle of crazy. He sold the whole company to Elon Musk for $50 billion, so please welcome Jason Wood.
I have not yet seen a cent of that $50 billion, too.
Yeah, so I wouldn't count on it.
That would be cool, though. All right. So imagine you're sitting in your house, watching TV, doing something or other. You hear a whining noise. Sounds like a small weed eater buzzing around your house for a few minutes and then just disappears. And what you may not know is that this case, in this scenario, every Wi-Fi enabled device in your house has been identified and located to the different rooms they sit in. That's basically the scenario in a research paper that was written by, and I'm going to mess these guys' names up, so I apologize ahead. They're listening. Ali Abedi of University of Waterloo and Deepak Vasisht of the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Basically, the researchers published a paper and presented it at the 2022 Mobicom conference. Happened a couple of weeks ago. Mobicom is the mobile conference, part of the Association for Computer Machines. And so this caught my interest for a couple of reasons. One is primarily, actually, I did a senior project in college where I took a couple of Linksys routers and mounted them on a tracked wireless RC car and had that scanning for wireless networks. And I had visions of using the GPS, using GPS to pre-plot out a course and drive this car around. I never quite got that far. But Abedi and Vasisht, they took this to a different level, literally, by attaching about $15 to $20 in electronics to a DJI Mini 2 drone. And this is a fairly small drone. It's like 230 some grams or something like that. Their electronics that they had consisted of 2 Wi-Fi modules and a voltage regulator, and then they I assume some software that they put on top of that, which they called YPEEP. It make for a really low weight, very mobile, wireless scanning setup. Came in under 200, like 240 grams or something by the time they were all done. So basically the way this works is, they use the drone to get in proximity of a house or some building. And then, their tool runs along and sends out various connection or contact requests to any mobile or Wi-Fi rather devices that they find in this area to see if they get a response back. Where did it come from? What's the signal strength? And then to get the signal strength. And then, of course, because they have the drone, they can move around to different locations around the building and start to figure out through triangulation where this device is inside of the building themselves. The functionality they're abusing is what's kind of dubbed, I guess, polite Wi-Fi, which is the idea that when a wireless device receives a request or some kind of contact connection, that it responds back in some way. And that transaction there is what allows them to measure the signal, also get some information like MAC addresses, which then could help them identify potentially what kind of device this is. And like I said, they can move around the house in really 3 dimensions to see where they're getting things. You could sweep across a neighborhood pretty quickly this way. They didn't say how fast, or at least I didn't find in their paper in the time that I had to see how fast this took to scan down a single building, but it still was pretty interesting. The level of accuracy turned out to be pretty good. They said on the lower level of like a 2-story house, they were able to get within 1.26 meters, so a little over 3 feet. Accuracy for their median as to where the devices were located. They said the maximum error was 2.3 meters, so a little over 6 feet, maybe 7 feet there. They said, though, that when they went to looking at devices on the second floor of the house, that the accuracy actually improved some there, and they were able to get closer and had less error. Honestly, I need to spend some more time reading through this. I presume that the difference between the first floor and the second floor is you've got less materials going through it. That it's interfering with the signal, like the roof and stuff like that. So the question here is, what can you do with this? I find this cool because it's just a cool bit of hacking, and this just sounds like a really fun project and well implemented. The researchers, really pointed out there are potential privacy issues here. The idea that people could be located inside of a building, specifically where they're sitting, identify where everybody is, if they're wearing devices or have devices that indicate, like, maybe a smartwatch or something like that. During their presentation, Abedi suggested that this tool could be used, or this technique could be used to locate guards, for example, in a bank, where they're patrolling because if they're wearing smartwatches. Perhaps that could be useful to burglars. I'm wondering a little bit because, bank guards are usually pretty visible in general. But, still. And you'd have to figure out, like, which watch is a guard. It would have to be like after hours or something like that. And I do wonder about it in an office complex or some kind of industrial building. What kind of interference are they going to get in there? Their work seemed to be focused around a home, which is a little bit different types of construction. So I'm curious as to how that will play out. This is definitely one of those things that strikes me as something that could be abused, but probably won't be really used by bad guys for the most part. We're just going to mostly have folks who are curious in their work, and they're going to try it out themselves on their neighbors and see what they can find. And then they'll be like, oh, that was cool. Look what I found. And that'll be the end of it. But, it still has some potential implications here. Maybe, bad guys are clever about coming up with ways to abuse things. So maybe there's more here than I'm not seeing in the time that I've had to think about this. Obviously, there's some limitations. The drone itself can be very, rather expensive. For example, DJI Mini 2 was nearly $500. So while the hardware added onto it was fairly inexpensive, the drone itself can get a bit pricey. You can find cheaper drones than that, though. So, but still there's a barrier here. And then the attacker has to get close enough to the area that they want to scan down. Possibly they could set something up where they have a pre-programmed flight path where they run through an area from a distance and then have the drone return to them. That's one possibility as well. According to the Gizmodo article, one of the things that they theorized on was locate, thieves could find where all of the electronics are in the house. That allows them to get in and get out faster. Most of the time, they'd have a pretty good idea where the gaming system and the TV and stuff like that are already going to be just by looking around the room. But, like I said, it was an interesting read. The Gizmodo article that I have both the Gizmodo article and the link to the research paper in the show notes. The Gizmodo article is a little bit more excitable than I would prefer, as it talks about being able to see through walls and stuff like that, which, at first I was like, what are they doing with this? We got some kind of 3D imaging of people walking around here because of Wi-Fi signals being blasted into a house. It's not at all what was going on. But I still really like what the researchers were able to do with this. Take some low-cost hardware, pair it with a consumer device, and mess around and see what results they can get. In this case, kind of interesting. Honestly, I would assume though that far more powerful and effective drones are already in use by militaries around the world. So this is something that's probably been done before pretty well. But if hardware hacking and wireless security is something you're interested in, got the show note links in the show notes. Go ahead and take a look. It's a fun read.
Sounds fun. I want a drone, so then I can cause all kinds of havoc. I can see getting arrested for that.
Yeah, you can get a lot of trouble with these things.
Yeah, there's all kinds of rules.
There's all
about
kinds
them.
of regulations and stuff out there too that people don't realize. Like I live within 5 miles of a Air Force base. I'm not supposed to fly without calling the tower.
Yeah. And you have to have like an FAA license to fly drones that are bigger than so many grams and all this other stuff too. So
correct.
So yeah, I'm sure you can get in all kinds of trouble, especially if you live near anything secret, classified, or just controlled. So yeah, airports are controlled. All right, thanks, Jason. And finally, remember that holodeck feature in Star Trek where they could remove the safety protocols? Yeah, really dumb. I mean, I understand that maybe the Federation did not have OSHA because they don't have seat belts on the Enterprise. It was little elevators that don't have any like gates or anything, so people probably falling off there all the time. But and it might be really fun to run around the holodeck fighting rabid Klingons. But if you die in the holodeck with the safety controls off, well, yeah, you die. So why would anybody do that? But, they did it all the time. It's like, I tell you what, let's turn the holodeck safety controls off to see what really would happen. But anyway, so apparently Palmer Luckey, who is a controversial person in and of himself, who is one of the founders of Oculus, said that he had built a weird new headset that was, quote, a piece of office art. And they had a picture of a VR headset, and they described it as having a bomb in it. So, quote, your head will explode if you lose. And so he went on and said, quote, I used 3 of the explosive charge modules I usually use for a different project. I was like, okay, you have explosive head bombs and you have multiple projects involving them, which is a little worrisome. I don't know what other exploding head projects you have, but okay, remind me not to buy any products from you. But if you want to play Overwatch for keeps, well, here's your opportunity. So I'm not going to say what it does if you lose at Leisure Suit Larry, but let's just put it down that it's gross. So, and that's the news. Thanks, Jason, and I will see you on Friday for the wrap up. Please go and vote. It's important.